All right, so thank you for your patience. Thank you for everybody that's still here tonight. And I will speak about ATEC. So I am Esteban de la Torre. I am half of ATEC. Judith Esther Carpati, she's a PhD textile artist. She's the other half. A little bit about myself. I started doing animation, but eventually I became very unmotivated by the fact that you work on something for a long time, and eventually when you finish it, it is done. It has like no forward life. It becomes kind of like frozen in time. Hence, I started to become very interested in interactive art and, of course, in sound. And then Judith Esther Carpati introduced me more into the textile as a medium, and I was just blown in the mind by that. So within ATEC, we work with hyperphysical interfaces, metamaterials, and programmable matter. This means a metamaterial or a metamaterial is a material that is more than the material itself, so it has extra capabilities. A quick example would be the wheels that are in the rover that goes to Mars. They are not filled with oxygen or with air, but they are actually made out of a net that if it does become deformed, you will only pass electricity to it and it will become the form, its original form back again. This is a memory alloy wire. It's called nitinol, and this is a good example of a metamaterial. Within our artistic practice, it is very much based on material research. And we, after a long process of material research, the outcome is usually an art installation. We do take some collaborations and commissions sometimes when it is something very interesting. We have been commissioned work by Dior, or we also do work for instance, like for Blade Runner, or we did the helmets for the latest Dune movie. So we try to keep our spectrum open. Today I want to talk to you about the work that we do inside of ATEC. So when we're talking about programmable matter, then we have to consider the fact that, of course, everything is matter, but we try to bring our work outside of the digital realm into the more physical, or as Haidu said, more like the analog realm. This is, for example, this is a plant which is augmented by photochromism. This means that we can connect with it with light. In itself, the plant eats light anyways, but this way we can kind of have a dialogue with all of these materials around us, living matter. And we are very much inspired by some aesthetics, the holonic theory, and new materialism. Within our work, we try to bridge the gap between the subject and object. I'm going to go through some of the newest works. If I'm spitting too much into the microphone, somebody signal me. All right. So, one of our latest works, it's called Feeler. This is large-scale antennas. We installed it in a gallery in Düsseldorf. This was a pretty tight gallery. It was very long, but it was not very wide. It was super, super tall. So this work is around the invisible landscapes that surround us, especially the electromagnetic landscapes. This is everything that contains electricity has a field around it, electromagnetic field. And at this moment, especially here in the middle of the city or me next to the computer, all of these invisible landscapes are happening around us. Yet they go totally unnoticed. Some people go as far as wearing tinfoil hats to protect themselves from these frequencies or from these magnetic fields. But evidently they are around us all the time. This work is around making them audible and making them perceptible to the visitors in the space. We like to call this the tone of space. So what you can see here is two large-scale antennas. Yes. So what you can see are the antennas. These are like 20 meters tall. The white and black one that you can see are actually the antenna coils. The electronics are on the floor, and it is constantly generating a soundscape by the activity of the electromagnetic frequencies in the space. Of course, this is not pre-written. This is actually, you can see that there is an elevator next to the piece. Every time the elevator would go up, then the soundscape would change entirely. The colorful one that you can see, we were there a couple of times to scope the space out. This is actually a map from one of those times, a map of the electromagnetic activity in the space. This was running for about 5 months. We called it a hyperspectral drone. The type of music that it created was drone music, and it was constantly being generated by the tone of space, by the electromagnetic activity in the space. The activity of the people in the space was also perceptible through their electronics, through the pocket-held computers, and it's called Feeler. Superb. So the next work that I would like to show is actually part of our research at the university. It's called a Dundekar cloak. It is a series of textiles that are augmented in order to perceive touch. This is not only an on and off trigger sort of touch, but it does hold depth. The conceptual background is a lot based on the Shipibo textile by the Conibo people in the Amazons. This is a tribe which uses plant-based healing processes in order to heal. And they have these songs called Icaros. The Icaros are sort of chants that are a score, as well as while they are knitting or weaving these textiles, become embedded. So this is information embedded into the textile. In our case, we worked with fractals. And these fractals of infinite depth also show how, or highlight how there is no real separation between subject and object. It's more like a illusion of scale. And also the depth of touch. We were very much interested in not creating just a on and off interface, while the haptic feedback from textiles is a beautiful, very intimate experience. We wanted also to bring the depth of holding, of dipping deep into these textiles. And they're augmented in the visual cues are the fractals themselves. We premiered this piece at the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington, D.C. A couple of months ago, or maybe even a year now. And this is basically also highlighting the intersection of textile processing and computer technology. And the technical backdrop, you can think about it, it's either running with OSC, Open Sound Control, running going into an analog synthesizer, or with Bela. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Bela I/O. It's a really nice microcomputer that's based, it's good for creating sound. It's just jumps blocks, so you have like priority on audio. It's a series, it's ongoing, and it's part of the research that we're doing now at the university. And I'm going to jump a little bit. This is part of another research that we're doing of, we call it like dynamic displays. This is trying to reconsider or rethink of displays as not only always being this flat, soulless sort of interface, but rather augmenting things around us. The first plant that you saw, the flower that was drawing on, it was also around this being able to like receive notifications or from the digital world or from not the digital world through something else that's not a screen. This is kind of like early research process, and we call this as the haunted chromatics. This is actually trying to, so this is a textile dipped in pigment that reacts to the string, which in the bottom is being moved back and forth. when you talk about displays, you can see how the displays have a resolution, dots per inch. In the textile world, you also have a resolution, it's ends per inch. And it brings to question this image creating format about when is the image actually done. So once you take a picture, and this is a little bit part of the process of materials and how they have an ongoing life that we are very much unaware of. So in this case, we had a thread being pulled on both ends of this textile. It worked all right, but the traces were very much restricted to being end to end, and we started to try to look into ways of drawing within the textile. This is a further trial. Can you put the volume a tiny bit up, please? So this is looking at an image as a time-based process, not something that is done and finished. And when we started to work around this project, we also realized the similarities that it had with like music creation, how music uses time as a canvas and all this sort of stuff. We wanted to use time as a canvas for this image traces as well. So we connected it to my then iteration of my baby synthesizer, and we added sensors of motion into the pen that was making these traces, and created kind of like a conglomerate of these two medium. And we like to call this like neo-analog agencies, meaning that they are kind of like resurfacing these analog things that are somehow depreciated in today's culture. It brings up this process of slow art and or like the slowing down and being able to like look at something and not having this 6-second time span of looking at something and then you swipe to the next thing, but going back to the same thing over and over and realizing that every time you look at the same thing, you're actually looking at something different. Of course, it goes back to this idea of you can never step in the same river twice, but it can be something really, really beautiful that within ATEC, with our artistic practice, we would like to kind of like push forward this allowing for the artwork to speak to you and allowing yourself to kind of immerse, not in this immersive installation sort of sense, but rather like really giving yourself into the art piece. And rest in peace, Richard Serra, but you know, he was like very, very much into this whole approach, and he was a very big inspiration for us. So as you can read the quote, "Is the picture made in a single moment? No, it is built up piece by piece, just like a house. And the spectator is looking done in a single moment." And I guess the answer is no. So this is one of the iterations from this exact same project. So what we were doing was having a trace that was being morphed in time, being painted on the same canvas. And you can see it plays it. You can kind of see the difference between the two dyes that we were using. You will see the black one and the blue one. So this is the blue dye. It is much more dynamic. You will see exactly the same trace on the black one. The sound, the X, Y, and Z axis of the trace are connected into different control voltage features on the hardware synthesizer. instance, like this exact trace. So if you see the blue one. Okay, so the exact trace is also the exact same trace is happening on the black as well. And you can see how it remains longer. This is also real time. So this was the first kind of like finalized piece with this idea. It was named Deep Flux. We exhibited at the Ludwig Museum here, and it was also part of the Material Biennale in China. And this was a little bit like, like 21 and 22, where ChatGPT was still non-existent, so we were using like GAN. And we trained a model with Vera Molnar and Manfred's more work. Vera Molnar also rest in peace. And so for people that are not familiar with them, Vera Molnar and Manfred Mohr Vera Molnar was one of the main pioneers of this sort of algorithmic art. They started working, I mean, Vera Molnar did it even before she had a computer. She had a notebook. It was called Computer Imaginaire, and she would Machine Imaginaire, and she would write these algorithms and then draw them by hand. Eventually, she got access to a plotter and became one of the most incredible artists of our time. And so whatever, we trained this algorithm with some of her work, as well as some of Manfred's more work. And the idea was to have this self-painting canvas, a canvas that would paint itself based on this kind of like these rules. We were lucky enough to show some of the original works that were part of the database, or like the training things that we used for the work, and I'll show you some of the results in a second. This was the active versus inactive state. It was actually, in that case, the picture that we took was from laser glyphs from Manfred Mohr. This is the laser glyphs being painted. I'm going to jump into the Vera Molnar, which is here. Yeah. So this is square transformations from Vera Molnar. It's a famous series. If you know this work, then you will be able to like recognize that it's slight variations on the same idea. And you will see that by the end of the trace, in the beginning of the trace was not existent anymore. So it really forces the spectator to, I don't know, like kind of like to single into to really focus into the work before it disappears, instead of like knowing that he can scroll back to it or just like save it. It's kind of something that happens there. It's not really saved in any way. The temperature in the gallery was also very much depending on it. So let's say on the opening night, the traces lasted much, much longer than when only a single visitor was in the space. After this work, we kind of pushed a little bit forward, and we created Synoptics. Synoptics actually is an altar piece. It's a triptych. We were very much interested in altar pieces in different. Whenever we have the luckiness to visit a city, we always visit the church as well, and they have some really beautiful altar pieces, especially very much loving the one in Ghent, the Holy Sheep, Holy Lamb, the Holy Lamb in Ghent. It's an amazing altar piece, and we wanted to create an altar piece that was resonating with our current approach, not so much into a mythology of an existing something, but rather to this evoking of a new faith or a new spirituality that is very much connected to materials, not very much into a middleman that has connection to the big guy upstairs, but rather to the materials which we're all made of and exist around us. So we created an altar piece around this. We call it synoptics. These are the black canvases are augmented by two different pigments, the bottom one being this white to black and the top one being as the liquid crystals. So we wanted to take the flatness of a liquid crystal LCD display and put it into this altar. You can see the different traces from it. This was the idea of creating a language of we call these thermoglyphs. There is the glyphs, phenomenons of entanglement, and they are symbols of self-transforming substance. We use diffusion reaction to kind of like create this sort of language, and then they allowed it to, again, play itself. It looks a bit like this. The sound is also being generated by the motion, and in cases of ceremony, I would go behind my synth and kind of like interact or jam with whatever the machine was writing. I'll show you a quick time lapse. This was kind of like a session. It would last, I don't know, somewhere between 20 to 35 minutes. It really like depended. You can see the center canvas or the center part of the triptych. It was much more of a bigger, thicker, slower platonic solid. And on the outside, it was kind of like this diffusion of matter, kind of like expanding forward or outwards infinitely. These are some of the traces, just like we call them thermoglyphs. They were short-lived, so we took pictures of them to kind of like hold them. This is the hardware sound making machine. This is my synthesizer, and this is like the plotter system. And with these dynamic systems or these dynamic screens or dynamic surfaces, we so far you saw them kind of like a sort of a visual output, but we also experimented with them in another way. This is a very, very old experiment. Actually, this was also part of Kitchen Budapest. Whoever, like I think everybody spoke of Kibu nowadays. So Kitchen Budapest, we had a grant there for some time. We developed this idea, and the idea is as augmenting a textile in order to produce a sound. So using it as a membrane, making it vibrate in order to hit the air and change the air pressure around you so you can perceive it as a sound. And in this case, this was at the beginning, so the textile was not so efficient, yet hence it became warm. And this is the result of it. All the sound that you can hear is actually coming from the textile vibrating at the moment. Due to the inefficiency of this speaker, you get the color change, which is a beautiful inefficiency. these are all sound-emitting textiles, and it very much resonates with our idea of material as vibrant matter, as something which is not just laying around us, but it's actually living with us. This was a further experiment where we could get much more efficiency and a hi-fi soft speaker, high fidelity. Okay, I'll bring it back so you can hear it. And you can really see how the high end of the spectrum is clear, but the low end is visible. Can I get a bit more of volume, please, for this one? It's a little bit low, if possible. Because it is trying to push all the frequencies out at the same time, it becomes distorted, but then you get this beautiful dance around it as well. So this was also pretty much of an older trial. We also played with us the duty cycle of it. This is supposed to have sound. I don't know why it doesn't, but it's okay. It's just like a really loud tone. And we're actually, so the motion is being held by the pulse width modulation on the speaker. So we're controlling, we call this the duty cycle yoga. And this was part of the doctoral research of Judith Esther, the other half of ATEC. So we went through a lot of the examples. We tried every material we could get our hands on, every coil shape, to kind of like test and see what would be the best solution. We made one that it's actually Hertz, his portrait. We did a coil that looked like Pavarotti that would only play Pavarotti. We tried leather, fur, everything. And after this long process that is very often in our in our research, we go through a lot of trial and errors. We burnt, I think, all of Kibu's amplifiers. And I think after this, during Judith Esther's research, we also burnt others. And eventually we ended up with this work. It's called Face In, Face Out. It is actually 48 individual channels on the black textile and white individual channels on the top, which means that you have over 50 individual channel. It's a sound system. It's also very much inspired by our love to old Jamaican sound systems and dub, and the way that you build your own sound system, you bring it somewhere and you just like play it. And the idea behind it is to create spatial models in sound. So I think this is a close-up of the bigger coils. This is a 5-channel textile. This is also the smaller coils that are like laid out on the table. And we had this idea of creating like multi-channel compositions. So you would, I don't know how much you can see it, but you have like different traces of the sound going around. And then let's say if you have, we call it physical modulation. Yeah, physical modulation, which means that you will send, let's say, like a sine wave at 440 in a sound path, let's say in the top one, and then you send a square wave at 440 or 220 in the bottom one. And while they are hitting an individual channel, then you would listen to that wave in itself. But the moment that they interact, they will modulate each other, creating artifacts. And of course, you can create different areas of it, different paths, and it creates a very, very interesting approach to what sound is. And this is sound incited by material itself, meaning that it is material inciting material. And the difference between having, you know, like in the 4D sound, where you have like a really like high-end multi-directional sound system, is that most of the time the sound sources are hidden. They are the main actor, but at the same time they're not there anymore. So you're just like they're experimenting sound, and we wanted to kind of like bring the sound sources to the center point and kind of like have them be there, and people be mesmerized by this sort of scientific wonder that we just take by granted, which is, you know, inducing sound through like this mechanical movement, and then, you know, like da da da, like all of that. So this is what we brought them into the bring them into the middle. And with most of our work, what we try to do is to not just, so we don't aim for our work to be a final art piece, but rather for them to be different tools that the visitors or the participants can use in order to whatever they want. They're just like tools. So you can see this is a really low frequency, like an LFO just running through the 48 channels. Slowly bringing the frequency up. The sound can be very, very rich when you're in the space, because you have so many individual channels, so it has like a really high resolution. Also, all the phase cancellation that happens in the space can be like super exciting. Many people that come that are known or like that know about music, they constantly ask, where's the sensor that is following me? Because it is a very much of a individual or like personal experience to what's happening. You really feel that because we kind of like create this. So we create sound spaces, and a sound space is not a space that is filled with sound, but a space that is created by sound. And while the sound is happening, then the space is existing, but the moment that the sound is no more, then the space is no more. And these spaces, we envision them as this sort of fog or haze that you can kind of like walk in through. This is why it's a very personal experience. Also, you have to think that sound is not only experienced by the ear canal, but it's through the entire body. Yeah. So this is just like that was a patch for that. We do Max MSP, which is something that we work with. It was in the Japan Media Arts Festival. When we're talking about sound spaces, part of the research was around archaeoacoustics. This is the research of listening for clues of sound in our prehistoric past. I don't know if somebody's familiar with Yegor Reznikov. He is a researcher that has found the correlation between cave paintings and the resonance in the cave, meaning that where there is more paintings, there is much more resonance in that place, much more echo. This means that the ceremonies that took place there were very much, I mean, if you think about it, like back then, like going into an acoustic space that is suddenly like inside, like back then inside and outside was very, very different. You know, you would kind of like spend many time outside, like world existed outside, but when you would go into this sheltered place that you might find, I don't know, an animal before you had to like take over the place or whatever, it was like going into this dark, into like the womb of the earth, and there you had the ceremonies, which we don't really know exactly what happened there. But I think it's very, very important to realize that it is not only the petroglyphs that we can see today, but also the importance of the sound that happened in these ceremonies, as well as the lost traces of thread or textile that are also tacit because they have rotten away by time. Only the rock has stayed, but we could easily call this age like the age of string and not just like the age of stone, because the string was also like a really important technological advancement for that time. Okay, so this petroglyphs being connected to the sound is very, very important, and I think it's so important that, of course, during human history we have created different churches, pavilions. I mean, there are cathedrals that were like literally built around a song, so that song would sound like great in that cathedral. And if we go outside of this personal spiritual approach to the divine, then you have like sound pavilions, for instance, and this beautiful Xenakis, I mean, it was supposed to be Corbusier, but Xenakis and Varese took over because he, like Corbusier was in Mumbai. I think he was in Mumbai, like building a city or something. So he just gave like this piece to like his friends, like Varese and Xenakis, and they created this, one of the first kind of like sound pavilions that exists, that kind of like stays today. It was like a multi-channel space that had projections, and it was built in Brussels for the World Fair. And of course, it was the joining of architecture, sound, art, and everything. And this, of course, is a gigantic inspiration for us as well, as much as the petroglyphs and the cave paintings. Xenakis did a couple of these. They were called like diotopes. For instance, for the opening of the Pompidou, he created this one made of nylon. I think it was made from nylon or some sort of plastic. It was also like a unique space for listening. And if you're familiar with Xenakis's music, you know it's much more than music. It's very much like a visceral, powerful. It's sound. It's not like music, it's sound. And it's important to know that, for instance, Xenakis lost half of his face when he was young, fighting fascism. He held a grenade for too long. And I think that that really much reflects on his compositions and his art. It's so powerful and so much like on your body. And this is, again, sound that is not only experienced through your ear, but through your entire body, something that you don't necessarily need to understand intellectually, but it like really hits your skin and your bones and everything. And with this sort of idea that of creating like diatopes that Xenakis used to do, we also have this idea like third space. This was a unique site-specific installation at Linz at the BB15. It's also like each of the coils that you can see is multi-channel. The ones that are that one, yeah, sorry, yeah, this one. The colorful one is actually made from lightweight organza or silk. So it's very bad for producing sound, but it's beautiful for LFOs. It dances quite beautifully. And this is, again, the idea of creating a sound space, which we don't want to fill the space with sound. We want to generate a space with the sound. This is, again, sorry, this is a triptych of LFOs. And I'll show you a video about how this work in a moment. I'm just gonna go through a little bit faster from this kind of like installations that are like creating like sound spaces. 2 minutes? Oh shit. Okay. So to the video. Okay. Yo. Okay. So this is like the different sound spaces. Yeah. Resonance and reverberation. We also create, when we don't perform on our sound systems, we create different interfaces that we leave in the space so the visitors can perform on it. And of course, our natural formation of choice is a conch, or this is the queen conch. They're like beautiful. And some people are very much into minerals. Some people are very much into mushrooms. We're very much into conch shells. They're like beautiful. A big inspiration is Bernhard Leitner. He is an architect, like Haidu Gaspar. Probably left already. Yeah. He's an architect as well, and he was one of the first architects in the 70s that started to like really work with this sort of integrating sound into the space very heavily. This is kind of like a 6x64 loudspeaker system array. And of course, many of these just ended up as being concepts, but if you read his work, it's very, very, very interesting. It's very inspirational. The coils that we work with, that we augment the speakers with, they are spiral formed. Spirals are very, very interesting for us. They appear in many, many ways. In the natural world, as well as in kind of like the human mythology and the human divine realm. And for instance, this is in Nazca, and this is not necessarily this one because this is not known why it came, but part of the idea of many of the spirals or labyrinths are about walking the path, the practice of walking inside the labyrinth, which will not necessarily lead you any further, but it might lead you somewhere deeper or higher. And I think this is something which is very beautiful, especially in this type of life that we lead, that really much running from A to B, and I need to be C. It's great to kind of have this slow down approach to it, this ritualistic approach to breathing and walking. And yeah, I'll push further because I think I'm already over. This is another piece. This was in Brno, in the catacombs. Brno is famous for the catacomb systems, and we were commissioned to create a multi-channel installation down there. We laid our textiles around. This is actually negatively woven. So this was a printed textile, and then Judith, by hand with a charolta, undid it slowly, as piece by piece, which is extremely long, but it kind of allows the material to express itself. It kind of like, you can kind of like see how it desires to look in a certain way, and a little bit it's reminiscent of, you know, the archetypes of let's not going really deep into it, but, you know, archetypes of like how is kind of like this a recurrent sort of like material manifestation of a thought, and this is a little bit how could we like visualize it. And again, we created this sort of like liminal space where the participant could just like be part of it, walk the path, breathe with the path, and cross the gate or eat the gate or whatever they needed to do with the gate. I'll push further. This is again like a 5x5 channel system, and the phase cancellation in the middle was very much hypnotic. It was interesting. This piece was up for a while, I think, and it was interesting to see how the people would react in that space if they would look at the speakers or look at the hanging piece. And it was crazy how some people, of course, they kind of like kneeled towards the piece. They were like, "Oh wow, this is kind of like the, I don't know, the blue one." Okay, we had an Odra deck, and okay, I have a low. Okay, so for instance, it's like a LFO, like 2-channel LFO. On that is the textile piece. So it feels kind of like it's breathing. I'm going to show last video. So, okay, this one was in a gallery that had like 3 rooms, and we kind of like created harmonics, really hard harmonics in each room. So the participant would walk from room to room, kind of like traveling through a harmonic chord. And I'll find the video. Sorry for pushing on, but I think I'm already very late now. Okay, so this is a 2-channel system. So we have here the negatively woven in the middle, and you can see here one of the spirals. The other one is on the other right, and then you send an LFO into them, and you allow for the material to perform itself. This effect that you will see now is really hard to be inside it, but it's if you allow it to happen, then it happens. This sort of ripples that occur are there's a couple of other experiments, but yeah, this was in Den Haag in what's it called, Rewire. This was in Rewire, and yeah, that's it. I'm pushing forward. Okay.